Hello everybody, it's good to have you here. I'm the Last Mikester, and welcome back to the channel for some more Primal Carnage Extinction. It's been a couple months since I've done a video on this game, and so I thought I would do a follow-up of sorts to my tips and tricks for new players video that I did a couple months back. This time around, just going a little more in depth with all of the classes in the game, starting with the humans. Primal Carnage can be quite a tough game for new players, and some of the classes have pretty damn steep learning curves, so I wanted to offer some help to anyone who might be struggling or maybe just need some general pointers. This is going to be its own mini-series, so I'll start with all of the human classes in this video and group all the dinosaur videos after this one based on class, so tyrants, then raptors, etc. One other thing I wanted to mention before we get going here is that all this is based off of my experiences with these classes and my preferences. So while I may not like a class for whatever reason, if it fits your playstyle and you like it, then by all means play the class as much as you want and have fun. You're not wrong or invalidated because you have a different opinion than I do. I wanted to make that very clear, especially in this day and age where, especially online, some people think that if you have a different opinion than they do, then you're wrong, which is, well, wrong. All I'm here to do is provide information on each class and some general tips and strategies based off of the almost 1,000 hours that I have on this game at this point, and that is by no means a brag. In fact, the more hours I put into this game, the more it concerns me, but that's okay. A couple general tips for humans: just stay with your team, wander off, and you will die. If you have to reload and there are enemies nearby, you can kind of just run and jump in circles and survive a little longer, since the humans have better turning circles than all of the dinos. All dinosaurs also have armored and critical hit points. All of this information can be found in the in-game spawn menu for the dinosaur, so if you're on the dinosaur team and you're about to spawn, you can find all the information there. Basically, when you hit a dinosaur in a critical hit spot, it'll deal more damage. When you hit them in an armor spot, it'll deal less damage, and then any other spot is just normal damage. Finally, all humans have two types of melee abilities, the first of which is performed while their secondary is out. It's just a quick little knife slash thingy that deals light damage.
Let me see what you have!
No! And then there is the recently added heavy melee attack, which is performed when you have your primary weapon equipped. It's so goddamn awkward to look at and use. Yeah, most of the time it just doesn't really work at all, but does deal more damage than the regular little quick melee that you can do with your secondary, and it will stun and kind of knock dinos back. That's about it. Let's begin with my least favorite class, and also the class that I think is just the worst, the Pathfinder. This noble fellow has 3 shotgun options for his primary, starting with the default, which is your standard pump action. This thing should be good at close range, and sometimes it is, but other times it just isn't at all. The main problem with the Pathy's primary weapons are inconsistency, and that is on full display here. Sometimes it'll deal 200 damage close range, and other times it'll deal like 30, so I'm not sure if it just hasn't been playtested by the devs enough or what, but it is definitely the main problem with the weapon, and unfortunately it's also the main issue with the second option for the Pathy, the double barrel, which should be an ultra close range beast with a long ass reload time, ends up having the reload and close range properties, while the high damage is never a guarantee. Sometimes it can one-shot the Pachycephalosaurus, which has 700 health, and sometimes you'll blast a little dino in the face point blank and it'll barely flinch and proceed to eat your reloading ass. So I guess my advice here is to use at your own peril. The double barrel can also pierce armor, which just basically means that when you hit a dinosaur in an armored spot, it will deal the normal damage as opposed to the reduction that you would get otherwise. Now, the third shotgun is where the things get a little better with the Spaz. High rate of fire, large clip size, and an actually reliable damage output of about 200 at close range makes this the best weapon the Pathy has to offer. However, it wouldn't be Primal Carnage if the weapon wasn't at least a little broken, and in this case it's just that the Spaz has ridiculous range, like I'm talking assault rifle range. It can pretty reliably deal 50 or so damage at medium range, which may not seem like a lot, but with a high rate of fire and a clip size of 8, it's a bit much. It can also deal damage at long range, only like 5 to 15, but it really shouldn't have the range that it does. For secondaries, the Pathy has a fast-firing, low-damage MK pistol, which all of the humans except the Trapper have as a secondary option. It used to to be better back when you could hold left click and it would keep firing, but unfortunately now you have to click for each shot. There's also a party pistol, which along with the party cannon for the scientist are two items that I believe all players get for free. I've heard you need a code to get them. I scrolled through the whole Steam page for Primal Carnage and just couldn't find it, so either you get the items automatically when you buy the game, or you may be able to find out more than I did by asking the Discord, which I'll leave a link to in the description if you want to join. My apologies that I wasn't able to find the code, folks, although you aren't missing much by not having them. Both of them kind of end up looking like a toddler had a birthday party and had just a little too much cake and threw up on a gun, but whatever. The party pistol is just the MK pistol with a different skin and more annoying sound effect, nothing more. Next is the Desert Eagle, which has a higher damage but slower rate of fire, although you can just hold down left click and it will keep firing until you have to reload, which is nice. Lastly, the worst secondary option in the game, the machete.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
This weapon is so useless that I actually forgot it existed when I was making this video and had to edit it in a bit later. It has a basic slash that only tickles most dinos, a heavy charged attack that just takes forever to wind up, and if you miss, which is easy to do, you are screwed. I think the fact that a shitty pistol like the MK is better at close range than a machete should say something. Now we get to the Throwables section, and the Pathy has two, the hatchet and the flare. The hatchet, well, it's a hatchet. It's sharp and can be thrown at a dino to give them a DIY colonoscopy. It's not bad, it's just deals about 100 damage, more if you can get a critical hit, but that's no easy feat considering it's thrown pretty slow and it's just hard to aim. Also, you can sometimes retrieve a hatchet if you miss your shot by just walking over where it landed, which is a nice touch. Onto the flare, which can just be crazy in the right scenarios. It doesn't deal any damage, but throw this baby down and you'll blind the shit out of the dino team. Like, here's the flare from the perspective of a dino, and yeah, as you can see, well, actually, you can't. Anyway, it's definitely just more annoying than anything, but can work out pretty well for crowd control and against tyrants, although be aware that the Dilophosaurus can extinguish flares by spitting on them. Moving on to the class that pisses me off the most when I'm playing Dinosaur, and that's the Scientist, which is this game's sniper class. The amount of times I have been cross-mapped by these eggheads just... ugh. Thankfully, in a recent patch, they nerfed the hipfire of the sniper rifle a bit, but even with that, the Scientist in the hands of a good player is just straight up annoying and not fun to play against. This is easily my least played human class as well, just because I don't really enjoy playing sniper classes in games, especially in a game where 90% of your enemies are melee only, and generally very fast, but that's just my preference. She has a sniper rifle for her primary default, and yep, it's a sniper, no doubt there. It's got long-ass range, a crap rate of fire, and isn't that great close range. Really all there is to it. Decent weapon overall, with good damage, although it's really quite bad at dealing with swarms of dinos, as you might expect, which you tend to encounter a lot in this game. The second primary is called the Assault Cannon, which is a sniper cannon thing with more recoil than an actual cannon from the 18th century. I gotta be honest, I've come to dislike this thing. I don't know, the clip size at 4 is just awkward, and the aiming and hit detection is kind of off. Sometimes you need to aim higher, sometimes lower, I don't know. Compared to the default sniper whose bullets travel pretty straight, it's just weird. It also pierces armor, and it has a pass-through ability, which means the bullets pass through targets, so if dinos are lined up in a row, you can hit all of them, but this just so rarely happens that it's not a versatile feature of the gun. There's also the party cannon. Like the pistol, it's just a different skin for the assault cannon and has an annoying sound effect as well. Isn't that nice? For the Scientist's third primary, we have the Tranquilizer Rifle, which is a medium-range weapon that has a damage over time effect that stacks each time you get a hit, and also drains stamina of dinos. This weapon is okay against the smaller dinos, but I feel like its primary purpose is just to annoy the piss out of the bruisers and tyrants. If you get any more than 3 or 4 consecutive hits, the damage output is just ridiculous, and it can easily get a Carno to about half health in 4 or so hits. Honestly, if the damage stacking wasn't so absurdly high, the fact that you have to get consecutive hits to deal any amount of real damage, that hitting armor points on a dino nullifies the stacking DOT, and finally dinos being able to cleanse the stack by roaring would make this weapon fairly balanced, but the damage you can dish out with just one clip is stupid. Now on to Secondaries, where the Scientist mostly has nothing good at all. She has the MK pistol like the Pathy, a Tranquilizer pistol which functions like the Tranquilizer Rifle but just deals less damage. This thing, well...
That is one big pile of shit.
And finally, the compound bow, which is probably the most skill-based weapon in the game, along with the sniper rifle and trapper's net gun, which we'll get to later. It's a fun weapon to get good with, mostly because it has a charged shot system, where you draw the bow back by holding right-click, and once the little loading circle type thing, well, comes full circle, you are ready to fire a charged shot. 1 charged shot to a raptor spitter or flyer, 2 to a bruiser, and I don't know, like 6 or so to a tyrant, will deal bleed damage, which is another type of DOT in the game. It's a pretty decent way of, well, being annoying, because much like fire, for as long as it is applied, it will prevent a pteranodon from picking up people for any longer than a couple seconds, and prevent dinos from healing by chomping on a corpse. The bow also has 3 explosive arrows, which you can swap to by hitting R. These can set dinos on fire if you get a direct hit, but the explosion radius is just so tiny that it's not as usable for crowd control as you might hope it to be. It deals really decent damage at 250, but it's not enough to prevent the scientist from being the worst class to deal with swarms. She also isn't really helped that much by her 2 throwables, the first of which is a sensor mine, which will tag dinos that walk near it with a red outline for easier shooty fun time. This can help if a map has a lot of foliage or hidey holes that dinos like to use, but the detection radius, more often than not, just seems to be too short, so not a bad throwable, I guess. The other option is a gas mine, which doesn't deal any damage but releases a gas cloud of weirdness that rapidly drains dino stamina. This thing, I don't know, it's alright. The stamina drain is nice, I guess. Most of the dinosaur classes rely on high stamina to do well, but other than that, it's not super helpful. If it had like a light poison DOT effect or something like that, then it would be cool. But at this point, much like me when I hit puberty, it's just kinda big and awkward and probably smells funny. Okay, with memories of puberty in my head now, let's move on to the Commando, who, unlike me, has no testosterone problems. So, this manly man of manliness from the Isle of Man has 3 primary weapons, all of which are assault rifles, cause what else would a man carry? No sexual jokes, please. His default is an assault rifle grenade launcher combo, which is awesome! This is just a really solid weapon all around. The assault rifle portion deals decent damage, and the grenade launcher portion is perfect for blowing shit up like a man. I mean, sure, the grenade bounces around more than a bunny on meth, but who cares? One little sneaky thing you can do to mostly negate the bounce is by jumping just before you fire it so that the arc is higher and won't bounce off the ground. Next is the Carbine Rifle, a weapon with super awkward iron sights and slightly higher damage than the assault rifle, but it has no grenade launcher, so who cares? The final choice for your manly endeavors is a burst rifle, which has a scope, so it's a bit better at longer ranges than the other 2. It also has a bayonet thingy on the front, which deals bleed damage if you can get a melee hit in. Most of the time it's just awkward to use, but the main problem with this thing is that it has no grenade launcher, so who cares? For secondaries, the Commando has the exact same choices as the Pathfinder, the MK and the Deagle, and for throwables he has 2 support items, an ammo kit and health kit, both of which are fairly self-explanatory, and frag grenades, which after 3 seconds go boom. You get 4 of these by default, so they are perfect for chucking into swarms, and you are almost guaranteed to get at least 1 kill this way. Although, be aware that you can blow yourself up with these, so use with caution. Or don't. The Commando is a really strong class at the moment, a perfect choice if you're new to the game. He is kind of a jack-of-all-trades sort of guy, good at everything, but not really a master of any of it, with the exception of being Primal Carnage's version of Rambo, of course. Now on to the Pyromaniac, who is horrendous at long range, bad at medium range, and decent, I guess, at close range. He's also Scottish, so, you know, that definitely helps his case.
Healthier, maybe? I need fuel. This needs more fire. Stings! Tank's getting low. Healthier, maybe? Healthier, maybe? What have I done?
The Pyro only has 1 primary weapon, a flamethrower/chainsaw combo, which is not as cool as it sounds, unfortunately. The flamethrower has a pressure mechanic where when you're not using it, it will recharge and your next burst of flame will deal high damage, but deplete the meter, and this is pretty cool. The damage increase is fairly significant actually, and it's a fun minigame managing the meter, but the damage that it deals after this burst, just the general damage overall, is pretty crap. The chainsaw is of course super close range, as you might expect, but the damage is good, although it can overheat, so you can't just rev it forever. The flamethrower portion also pierces armor like the assault cannon and has the same pass-through feature, so you can hit multiple dinos with your flames of doom. For secondaries, the Pyro has the MK pistol, as well as what was my pick for the worst weapon in the game until I remembered that the machete existed, the flare gun. God, what a piece of junk! I understand that it's not supposed to be practical, and it can be fun to use if you just don't care at all about getting kills, but it's just so absurdly difficult to hit anything with it, and the flares fire so slowly that I can't recommend it in good faith. It can set things on fire if you hit them, and it actually deals damn good direct hit damage, like 270 for a critical hit, but against anything other than the huge hitbox of a tyrant, it's pretty much useless. Onto the Pyro's throwables, none of which are haggis, although that would be hilarious. He has decent options here, the first of which are Molotovs, which create pools of fire on the ground, naturally. These, just like the other two throwables, can damage or kill you if you throw them at or near yourself, so watch out. The direct hit damage is fairly decent, although it also has the downside of being a giant pool of fire that is fairly easily avoided. Next is dynamite, which goes boom, but it's on a fuse because it's dynamite. I never use dynamite just because the fuse is so long and it's also a neon orange stick, so unless it's just about to explode, dinos can pretty easily avoid it. The Pyro can cook the dynamite just in time for dinner with the in-laws, with some fire from his flamethrower. This shortens the fuse by a few seconds, but this requires you to get close to said dynamite, which might mean the dinos are not the only one going boom.
Oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
So, not a super useful mechanic or throwable for that matter. The final throwable is the best the Pyro has to offer by a Scottish countryside mile, and that is the impact grenade, which explodes on impact. Yeah, I know, who would have thunk it. It deals 500 damage for a direct hit, which isn't too tricky to get. These grenades are thrown pretty slowly, however, so you kinda gotta aim a few seconds into the future. Now, you may notice the Pyro has 5 throwable options in the customization menu, but the ornament grenade and grenade, I get it, cause it's an egg. Right. Anyway, these are just cosmetic variants of the impact grenade with no differences other than appearance and a different sound effect for the grenade. That's it. The Pyro also has a kind of back and forth going on with the spitter classes. The Dilophosaurus can extinguish itself and smaller dinos that are on fire, and also extinguish the fire pools left by Molotovs, while the Pyro can then set the acid pools left by the Cryolophosaurus on fire, and then Tylo can extinguish it. So that's the Pyro, a lovely Scottish man who is only just a bit better than the Pathfinder, and not a great class, but he is definitely fun to play and has the best crowd control potential out of all of the humans. I'm gonna throw a little extra tidbit in here. If you happen to like the single player / co-op survival mode that the game has, and yes, it is a thing, I feel like a lot of people don't even know that it exists, but it does, then the Pyro is probably the best class for that game mode. He works really well for handling the AI hordes. Alright folks, we have arrived at the final class, my dearly beloved Trapper. Ah, how my heart yearns for thee. Anyway, the Trapper is my favorite human class and also the class that I think is just the straight up best. His arsenal is also pretty unique and interesting, so let's dive right in. For primaries, he has 2 options, dual Colts and dual SMGs, both of which can be fired independently or together, although the dual Colts are single fire, so you have to tap the right and left mouse button at the same time to fire both, which I just kind of find awkward for aiming, so I use the SMGs, which, as they should be, are spray and pray weapons. For secondaries, even though you'll be using one of these more so as a primary, we have the party pistol as well as the net gun and stun gun. The net gun is the bread and low-fat butter of the Trapper, and man is it good. Firstly, it can instantly trap the smaller classes, Raptor, Spitter, and Flyer, so you can then walk up to them and melee them for an insta-kill. Even though the net doesn't last forever, I would say about 10 to 12 seconds or so, and the smaller dinos being able to bite and slash at the net to get it off their comrade, or the Cryo's ability to melt the net with acid, the Trapper is still the best counter to the smaller dinos by far. The net can also be used to negate the Ceratosaurus's primary bite attack, rendering it worse than useless, and you can shoot the net at the Carnotaurus and Pachycephalosaurus, although it really doesn't seem to do that much other than preventing the Carno from using its bite attack. Furthermore, the net gun can also negate the Tyrant's insta-kill bite attack if you manage to land it on their mouth, which can be difficult but can help you and your team out immensely. Do note that if the Tyrants and Bruisers have a roar ready to go, they can use that to break the net. The net gun will also prevent the tyrants and bruisers from eating to regain health, so that's an added bonus. So, a lot of good stuff that the net gun can do, but what about the stun gun? Well, don't bother, just no. Yeah, you see the stun gun functions similar to the net gun in Spirit, just that it electrocutes dinos instead of netting them, paralyzing the smaller ones for a short time, allowing you to melee them instantly, and the shock effect will also prevent tyrants from biting, although while the net gun seems to kind of slow them down a little as they struggle to get the net off their face, the shock effect doesn't seem to do the same thing. So, on paper the stun gun seems alright, but in practice things get a hell of a lot worse. For one, to get the full effect of paralyzation, you have to charge it up, which takes precious seconds that in the middle of a fight you're gonna need. And if you hold the charged gun too long without firing it, it damages you. Yeah, ain't that neat? Well done, devs. It's also way more difficult to aim than the net gun. So, a weapon that takes time to charge up can damage you and is harder to aim. I hope you can see why I don't recommend this thing. It's fun to try out once, or maybe even twice, but believe me, just to get a few seconds of this thing doing something useful for this video took far longer than it should have. So, on to the Throwables, of which the Trapper has 3, and they are all pretty damn good. For each of the Trapper's Throwables, he can only have 3 out on the map at any given time, which I believe is the same as the Pathy, only being able to have 3 flares out at a time. And after a while, they do despawn, so be aware of that. The first and best, and honestly half the reason why the Trapper is as good as he is, are landmines. Even since they got nerfed and are now the size of a pizza, I mean seriously, you could order this thing from Domino's and no one would bat an eye. Apparently some players complained they were too small and hard to see, which I'm no military expert, but I'm pretty sure that's the whole goddamn point. I know makeshift IEDs and stuff can be bigger, but whatever, even with the nerf, the mines are still awesome. And a little tip for them is to place them in stuff like bushes and grass, just foliage in general, or water, and they will be like 5 times harder to see. It's actually kind of ridiculous, so keep that in mind. See what I did there? The second throwable for the Trapper is the Bear Trap, which will instantly trap smaller dinos for a short time, so you can insta-kill them. And it gives a bleeding DOT to bruisers, which can be lethal, with an extended duration for each additional bear trap they step on, and it can actually put them in a crippled state if they step on 3, I believe, which not only applies the DOT for longer, but just slows them down a lot. If a Tyrant steps on them, they just break and deal minor damage, so not so effective on them, which is fine. The third and final throwable for the Trapper, and also the worst one of the 3, but is by no means bad, is the Zap Trap, which deals light damage in its small radius and prevents smaller dinos and bruisers from biting for a few seconds, which can be a major boon, especially to the Raptors who rely so heavily on their primary attack. They also deal more damage when placed in water, which is a really cool feature, and it can be activated multiple times, whereas the Bear Traps and Landmines are one and done. So, overall the Trapper is a super solid class with multiple ways to screw over his enemies, and is honestly the class that benefits the most from experimentation and seeing what works for you, mostly because of the solid throwable options he has. For me, I tend to main Trapper and Commando just because they fit my more offensive and high fire rate bias style of play, but each class has their own strengths and weaknesses, don't get me wrong, so just keep practicing and find what works best for your playstyle. Also, do note that you will probably suck in the beginning no matter what class you play. Now, I don't say this because I like making fun of noobs. In fact, I think making fun of new players is one of the bigger problems gaming has in general these days, and I want to do my best to rectify that. I realize I don't have the reach to do that for gaming overall, but maybe I can at least do that for the Primal Carnage Extinction community. I, of course, was also a new player at one point, and holy lord was I terrible, but since then I have improved, slightly. The game is genuinely fun, and I wouldn't have 1,000 hours in it if I didn't think so. Anyway, we are getting slightly off track here, so I'll end this video here by saying that my Dino class guides will be coming out over the next couple of weeks, so if you like this video, then those might interest you as well. And of course, thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribing. If you are subscribed, hit that bell so you don't miss any new videos. I always appreciate the support. Much love, take care, and until next time, bye-bye.